The night they told me my life was over, I didn't scream or cry. I simply nodded as if they were discussing the weather. While something inside me quietly collapsed. I was sitting in a hospital wheelchair, my legs wrapped in white bandages, my future wrapped in their pity. Doctors had finished speaking. My husband stood beside them, already distant. My sister avoided my eyes. Everyone thought I was listening to bad news. No one realized I was listening to betrayal. 2 weeks earlier I had been strong, busy, useful. Then came the accident. Sudden and violent on a road I traveled daily. Now they spoke about me as if I were a burden, already decided. My husband's voice was calm when he said recovery would take too long. My sister suggested I move back to our childhood home. I understood what they meant without hearing the words. They thought I would never recover, never stand, never matter the same way again. I was 32 and being quietly erased. When I reached home, my husband placed my suitcase near the door. Not in the bedroom. He said it was temporary. His eyes said otherwise. That night, lying on the couch, I stared at the ceiling and listened to whispers. I pretended not to hear. Bills, responsibility, options. My name sounded like a problem in every sentence. By morning, my sister had booked my ticket. By evening, my husband kissed my forehead like one does to someone already gone. I left without arguing, because pain had drained my voice. But silence does not mean surrender. As the bus pulled away, I pressed my palm against the window and made a promise I didn't yet understand. They believed my story had ended. I decided it was only pausing, gathering strength in the dark, waiting for the moment to rise again. The house I returned to smelled like old memories and quiet disappointment. My mother welcomed me with forced cheer, while my sister managed everything with careful authority. I was no longer asked what I wanted. Schedules were made for me. Decisions were explained, not discussed. Each morning, I dragged myself through physical therapy in the small living room, biting my lip to stop the sounds of pain. Progress was slow, and their patience was slower. My sister reminded me daily how expensive my care was. My mother prayed loudly for my healing, then whispered fears about my future. I learned to nod, to smile, to say thank you, even when shame burned my throat at night. I scrolled through messages from friends who stopped asking how I was. My husband's texts became shorter, colder, until they stopped entirely. One afternoon, I overheard my sister on the phone. She said she won't be the same again. We have to be realistic. Realistic meant powerless. Realistic meant dependent. I began to understand that my weakness was convenient for them. It justified control. It excused abandonment. So I grew quiet. I stopped sharing pain. I stopped asking for help unless necessary. In silence, I listened. I observed patterns, tones, lies. While my body struggled, my mind sharpened. I read books about recovery, about trauma, about rebuilding lives from nothing. I watched online lectures at night, learning skills I could practice from a chair. Small victories became secret celebrations. Standing for 10 seconds, earning my first online payment. Smiling without effort. They saw none of it. To them, I was still broken, still slow, still stuck. They mistook my silence for defeat. They didn't realize silence was where I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, away from their expectations, preparing for a future they no longer believed I deserved. By the time I could walk across the room without support, my sister had already decided my limits. She spoke for me at family gatherings, explained my condition to strangers, and accepted sympathy on my behalf. When I mentioned wanting to work again, she laughed softly and said, I should focus on healing. Healing to her meant staying small. My mother agreed, fear shining in her eyes. I stopped arguing. Instead, I worked harder in private. I trained my body every morning before dawn, pushing through pain that reminded me I was alive. I trained my mind at night, building skills that felt like secret weapons. The first time I earned enough to pay for my own therapy, I didn't tell anyone. Independence tasted sweeter when hidden. Meanwhile, my husband filed for separation, citing irreconcilable changes. He kept the apartment, the car, the friends. I received a polite apology and a box of old clothes. I cried that night. Not for him, but for the woman I had been before trusting him. Betrayal stripped illusions quickly. I began documenting everything. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Patterns emerged, financial choices, manipulated narratives, quiet decisions made without me. Knowledge gave me power. Strength returned, gradually visible now. I walked outside alone. I took public transport. I laughed again. The same people who once whispered began acting surprised. "You're doing so well," they said, as if success were accidental. My sister grew uneasy. Control weakens when the control changes. She reminded me often of the help I had received, of what I owed. I thanked her sincerely. Gratitude confused her inside. Something steadier than anger was forming. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I wanted my life back. Justice, I learned, didn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it required patience, preparation, and the courage to let others reveal themselves while you quietly outgrow the version of you they relied on. The opportunity arrived disguised as responsibility. My sister asked me to manage some online work for her business. Assuming I had time and no better prospects, I agreed calmly, hiding my smile. As I handled accounts, emails, and finances, I saw everything clearly. Mismanagement, unpaid taxes, ethical shortcuts. I fixed what I could. Documented what I couldn't. And learned more than she intended to teach me. My efficiency surprised her. My confidence irritated her. Slowly, clients began contacting me directly, thanking me for clarity and honesty. I redirected them professionally, never crossing lines, never rushing. Meanwhile, my own independent work grew. I registered a small company under my name, using savings I had hidden carefully the day I signed the papers. My hands shook, not from fear, but from pride. Physically, I was stronger than ever. Emotionally, I was calmer. I no longer needed approval. My husband reached out once, casually after hearing about my recovery. I replied politely and briefly. Closure does not require explanation at home. Tension thickened. My sister accused me of becoming distant. I told her I was becoming focused. My mother watched silently, torn between relief and fear. The truth surfaced gradually, as truth often does. Authorities contacted my sister about inconsistencies. Clients asked questions. She panicked. When she demanded my help, I gave her exactly what I owed her. Honesty. I share my documentation, not publicly, but with the right people. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult her. I simply stepped aside. The fallout was loud. Without me participating, accusations flew. Blame circled. I packed my things quietly and left that house without drama. As I closed the door, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't running away. I was walking forward, carrying dignity instead of rage, knowing that justice had arrived not through revenge, but through truth, finally standing on its own. Living alone for the first time, after everything felt terrifying and sacred. My new apartment was small, but it was mine. Every object inside represented choice. I arranged furniture slowly, honoring my body's limits, celebrating how far it had come. Work filled my days, meaningful and steady. Client respected me. They didn't see weakness when they looked at me, they saw confidence. Confidence settled into my voice. My past stopped introducing itself before I spoke. News from my family arrived through distant relatives. My sister's business collapsed under investigation. My mother struggled, confused, hurt. Asking why things had gone wrong, I visited once calmly and helped her understand without bitterness. I did not take responsibility for others' choices. That chapter was closed. Unexpectedly, messages came from people who had once disappeared. Friends, former colleagues, even my husband again. Success makes memory convenient. I responded with kindness and boundaries. Forgiveness does not require access. At night, I sometimes remembered the woman on the couch, staring at the ceiling, believing her life was over. I wished I could hold her hand and tell her to wait. Strength isn't loud when it begins, it whispers. It grows in hidden places. I began speaking publicly about recovery and resilience, not as inspiration, but as honesty. People listened because I didn't pretend it was easy. I told them about pain, about silence, about learning to stand when no one expected you to. Opportunities followed, not miracles, but earned moments. One evening, after a long day, I walked without thinking. Feeling pavement under my feet, air in my lungs, purpose in my chest. I realized I had stopped proving anything. My life was no longer a response to betrayal, it was a creation. Peace, I learned, was the greatest victory. And it arrived when I finally stopped looking back to see who doubted me and started looking forward to see who I was becoming. The invitation came unexpectedly polite and formal. A family gathering, an apology perhaps. I hesitated, then accepted. Not out of obligation, but curiosity. When I arrived, conversations paused. Eyes followed me differently now. I walked in confidently. Unsupported, unafraid, my sister sat quietly. Smaller than I remembered, consequences heavy on her shoulders. She looked at me with something like regret. I greeted everyone calmly. No speeches, no explanations, over dinner. Stories were shared, some rewritten, some avoided. I listened without correcting. When my sister finally spoke to me privately, her voice shook. She said she never thought I would recover. That fear made her controlling, that jealousy followed. You don't hang yourself for her honesty. I did not absolve her, accountability matters. But I also did not punish her. I wished her healing and meant it. Leaving that night, I felt complete. Not because they acknowledged me, but because I no longer needed it. My work expanded internationally. I hired people. I mentored women facing sudden loss and abandonment. I watched them learn what I had learned, that broken moments can build unbreakable foundations. My body still carried scars. Some days were harder than others, but weakness no longer defined me, it informed me. I understood now that recovery isn't about returning to who you were. It's about meeting who you become through fire. I stopped asking why it happened. I started asking how to use it. The answer showed up daily in small, meaningful ways. I slept peacefully. I laughed fully. I trusted carefully. And when people heard my story and said they couldn't imagine surviving it, I smiled softly. Survival was only the beginning. Living well was the real comeback, and I was doing that quietly, powerfully, on my own terms. They thought I'd never recover, because they measured strength by convenience. They saw my broken body and assumed my spirit had shattered with it. They were wrong. Recovery did not arrive as a miracle. It arrived as discipline, as patience, as choosing dignity when bitterness felt easier. I learned that silence can be armor. That observation can be strategy, and that justice doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it simply unfolds while you focus on becoming undeniable. My life today looks nothing like what I lost. It is better because it is honest. I no longer belong to expectations written by others. I belong to myself. When I stand in front of women who are newly broken by betrayal, illness, or abandonment, I don't promise easy endings. I promise truth. Pain changes you, but it doesn't have to end you. I tell them that the people who doubt them are often revealing their own limitations, not yours. I tell them that healing in private is powerful, and success doesn't require permission. The past no longer haunts me, it taught me. I carry lessons, not wounds. The husband who left became a chapter, not a definition. The sister who controlled me became a mirror, showing me what I never wanted to be. And the woman who survived became someone I deeply respect. If there is one truth I live by now, it is this. Never let those who abandoned you during your weakest moment decide your worth. Recovery is not about proving them wrong. It is about proving yourself right. I recovered not to return, but to rise. And in rising, I discovered something greater than revenge. I discovered freedom, self-respect, and a life built by my own hands. That is the ending they never expected. That is the beginning I earned.